What's a small, seemingly insignificant decision you've made that ended up having a huge impact on your life? Me and two other coworkers decided to grab some dinner after our shift. One ended up canceling, so I thought my other coworker would cancel too. We were both hungry, so we decided to still grab dinner together. We've been coworkers for over a year and have always gotten along, but this dinner truly felt like a first date. It was so enjoyable and we talked so much that we didn't realize the restaurant had been closed and that the workers had been cleaning up around us. Servers were too nice to interrupt our conversation. Him and I ended up falling in love soon after that. Been together for over 6 happy years and wouldn't change a thing. I had a blog where I couldn't figure out some HTML code, so I emailed the blog of another person who had figured it and they sent me the code. They lived about 1,000 miles from me and had never spoken before. 4 years later we're married, bought a house, and have a child together. Edit: for those curious, here is more elaboration on the story. Was at a conference and stepped outside for a smoke. Bumped into a friend of mine who introduced me to the man he was walking with. That man encouraged me to apply for an opening in his office and, 6 months later, he hired me. It was the job that jump-started my career, changing my trajectory. And all because of a bad habit. I took a job in an emergency room doing insurance paperwork. I thought, okay, but what happens before they get to the hospital? That exposure led to a career as a first responder. I never would have imagined I would be helping people in emergencies, been doing it every day for decades. I went to prison for a robbery. I did it. I was a heroin addict. After almost 5 years in, at a work center, I got a write-up which would make me stay in for a few months longer. The warden offered a deal if I would paint a mural at a local high school of their mascot, they'd forgive the write-up. I had always been good at drawing, they knew that, which is why they asked, but had never done a mural. I figured out how to scale it up in my head and did it. I got out about 6 months later and made it my career. I'm now married, happy, and fully booked until summer of next year for work, owning my own business. In September, I will have been out for 10 years. I also hid my initials in the high school mascot mural. I was flying to Costa Rica to go backpacking south from there. My sister told me to fly into Guatemala. I had to see it. So I did, and here I am still 10 years later, with a son and a life I never imagined. I was doing online dating with no success and I was ready to give up. I almost canceled my date just out of pessimism, but figured it's already scheduled, I'll just go, and if it doesn't work out I'll just take a break from dating. The date lasted about 8 hours and 15 years later, we're still together. Entered the green card lottery. Friend was trying to figure out how to do it, so I downloaded the instructions and completed an application to show them how. Since it was easier than asking them for all their info, I made a dummy application using my own info. When I was done, I thought, might as well, and dropped my application into the outgoing mail. Then forgot all about it. I was highly confused when, nearly a year later, I got a letter from the State Department. I'd been in the US for 20 years now, married, kids, the whole thing. Biggest change I ever made, and it was just a random 15-minute thing I did to help a buddy. On a night out, I went to Burger King and at the last second decided to get chicken nuggets with my burger instead of chips. I ate the burger but didn't feel like the nuggets by this point, and wished I'd gotten chips instead, so I asked the person opposite me on the bus if he wanted them. My exact words were, "Lad, do you want my chicken nuggets?" He said yes, and we got talking. That was 16 years ago, and now we are married with a beautiful daughter. Grabbed a beer instead of going home early. I got offered a job when I was struggling to find a first job. Started working at age 16. My supervisor suggested I sign up for profit sharing, a 401k precursor. Stayed with that company for 25 years, made a nice contribution to my retirement later in life. A kid's birthday party I wasn't planning to go to, I changed my mind at the last second, met my husband there. Playing WoW, I picked Druid. Ended up loving playing a healer. Decided to become a nurse IRL. Still like being on the healing team. I had just moved to Florida from PA with my brother, and we decided to grab lunch at a restaurant we'd never been to before. Got to chatting with the waitress, explained we were new, etc. She brought over her manager, and he offered me a job on the spot. Met a cute bartender, and 10 years later, we're married with a 5-year-old. Live in a new big city together. Just jumped on the gravy train of life head first by picking that place to eat at. Took an art appreciation course in college. Had a career that had nothing to do with art, but I've spent at least part of every holiday since then touring museums in different world cities, and various states and provinces in the US and Canada. It's given me so much enjoyment in life. Nearly didn't go to a blind date, but he was my soulmate. I knew in a blink when I met him. Lasted 33 years, and I still miss him. Was talking about communication encryption on a conference panel moderated by my friend, and I gave an example about unsecured Russian comms from the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. I was a full-time programmer back then. After the conference ended, my friend came to me and said, "Hey, I just started a new magazine, would you write an article about the Russo-Japanese War for me?" Yeah, sure, why not? 10 years later, /1000 articles later and 8 books later, I am somehow a fairly known author/journalist/blogger, and someone started a Wikipedia entry about me. Still do some programming in PHP, Python, and C++, though. Took an antibiotic for a possible infection and was perfectly healthy before. Ended up with permanent nerve damage at 24 years old, and it turns out I never had an infection to begin with. Accepted an invite to some dude's team on Overwatch video game. Now I live on the opposite side of the country with him, and we have 2 dogs and a Costco membership. Went for a jog even though I didn't want to. Ended meeting a cute woman who was a bit of a motor mouth, but we had a lot in common. We ended up dating for about 4 years. We wanted different things and ended it, but she's still a fantastic friend. Checking out a new tea shop that opened up in my area. I became friends with the owner, and she told me about a coding bootcamp, and less than a year later I had a great new career. I volunteered feeding the homeless at a local church years ago. Now I'm in a senior position addressing homelessness for the city of Los Angeles. Saw an absolutely gorgeous guy on a dating app. He was absolutely stunning, and so far out of my league. Normally I would never have messaged someone so obviously attractive, but I felt I needed to tell him that I thought he was the most attractive person I'd seen online. We've been together 11 years, married for 7, and I've never been happier. Oh, and he thinks I am the hottest thing on legs, so that's a huge bonus. Watched a beginner Blender tutorial series. Pretty sure that played a large part of why I got hired at my current company. And I just received a promotion after less than a year with a 0K/year raise that involves me using Blender to make beauty renders for marketing material. Getting a cat. I feel like she has done a lot of positive things to my psyche, against my loneliness, and also helped my mother. Cat sure turned the home into a comfy place. I'm terrible at judo and dislocated someone's shoulder. Felt guilty, so decided to learn first aid and found a course 40 minutes from where I live. Met my wife there, and I often think, what if I didn't slip up whilst training? Decided to work out again. I'm loving it, and I'm so much happier. About 22 years ago, I was fresh out of high school and had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I went out rollerblading one evening, and I decided to go down this road that looked familiar. I noticed a house and thought, hey, that kinda looks like my buddy from HS house, so I decided to knock. Sure enough, it was his house. He was having a LAN party that weekend and invited me to come over, so I did. Ended up meeting this obnoxious kid who wouldn't leave me alone. Kid ends up becoming my best friend and shaping the direction of my life. He eventually convinces me to play World of Warcraft when it came out. Roughly 3 years later, I met my now wife in WoW. All because I decided to go up and knock on a door. I stopped at a grocery store, and I saw a man standing next to his truck with a bunch of puppies. I approached him and ended up taking him my little angel of a dog. He gave me her for free,